Admiral Zextal of the Galactic Confederation had visited 37 worlds during their distinguished career, but Earth's gravity made them feel like a freshly hatched juvenile. Their ceremonial robes, woven with strands of living metal that typically flowed like liquid starlight, now hung heavy and awkward around their four-limbed frame. The anti-grav assists weren't helping either. They kept overcompensating for the planet's pull, making each step feel like a poorly choreographed dance. The diplomatic summit should be right through here, they muttered, neural tendrils curling in frustration as they consulted the holographic map floating before their secondary eyes. The layout of this human educational facility, they called it the International Science Center, was proving surprisingly challenging to navigate. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and Zextal realized immediately that this was not the Interstellar Relations Conference. Instead of the expected gathering of distinguished diplomats, they found themselves in what appeared to be some sort of human juvenile showcase. The large chamber buzzed with the energy of young humans, their excitement manifesting in a cacophony of chatter and movement that made the Admiral's sensory ridges tingle. They were about to retreat when a flash of familiar patterns caught their attention. In the center of the room, a small crowd had gathered around a holographic display that stretched from floor to ceiling. Within the projection, miniature starships danced through a star field with an elegance that stirred something in Zextal's memory. "Come on, Sarah. Thread the needle." The encouragement came from a young human male, his face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the holographic stars. The Admiral's gaze shifted to the focal point of the gathering. A small human female, perhaps 12 orbital cycles old by their estimation. Her dark hair was pulled back in what humans called a ponytail, and her fingers moved across the control interface with the fluid grace of a stellar cartographer. Sarah, as the others called her, didn't respond to the cheering. Her eyes remained fixed on the display, where her virtual fleet was approaching what appeared to be a complex gravitational anomaly. Zextal's tendrils extended in surprise as they recognized the phenomenon. It was remarkably similar to the treacherous Cassini resonance that had claimed 3 Confederation research vessels during their early exploration efforts. The girls' ships began to move in a pattern that made the Admiral's all 4 eyes widen. The formation split into 3 groups, each taking a different approach vector to the anomaly. The maneuver looked almost like, but that was impossible. The technique she was using resembled the classified tri-spiral approach, developed by the Confederation's best tacticians, but with subtle variations that somehow accounted for the gravitational eddies their own computers struggled to calculate. "Watch this part," Sarah said softly, her first words since the Admiral had entered. Her fingers executed a complex series of commands, and the ships began to weave through the gravitational distortions in a spiraling dance that defied conventional spatial mechanics. The holographic display erupted in a symphony of colors as the ship's paths traced luminous trails through the virtual void. "I added some new effects," she explained to her captivated audience. "See how the gravity wells make the light trails spiral. It's pretty, right?" "Pretty." Zextal's neural tendrils coiled tightly against their skull. This child had just casually executed a maneuver that would have earned her instant admittance to the Confederation's Advanced Strategic Academy. And she'd done it because it looked pretty. "Excuse me," the Admiral found themselves speaking before they could stop. "This simulation you're running, it's some sort of game." Sarah turned, blinking in surprise at the sight of the alien dignitary. A smile spread across her face as she nodded. "It's called Stellar Paths. Would you like to try? I just finished designing this level yesterday. Nobody else has beaten it yet." Zextal stepped closer, their ceremonial robes momentarily forgotten. They had a strong feeling that this wrong turn might end up being the most important diplomatic encounter of their career. Admiral Zextal found themselves perched awkwardly on a chair designed for smaller human frames, their neural tendrils extending unconsciously toward the holographic display as Sarah demonstrated her game's interface. The surrounding children had initially scattered at the Admiral's approach, but curiosity had drawn them back, their whispered observations creating a gentle backdrop of excitement. The controls are pretty simple, Sarah explained, her fingers dancing across the haptic interface with practiced ease. You can use standard paths, but those are boring. I like making my own routes through the hard spots. The Admiral's secondary eyes tracked the movement of her virtual fleet, while their primary pair studied the mathematical representations scrolling along the display's edge. What the girl called hard spots were actually complex gravitational phenomena that had puzzled Confederation scientists for generations. This section here, Zextal gestured with a tendril toward a particularly dense cluster of gravitational eddies. How do you navigate through it? Sarah's face lit up. Oh, that's my favorite part. Watch this. Her fingers executed a complex series of commands, and the ships began moving in a pattern that made the Admiral's respiratory chambers constrict. The fleet split into 5 smaller groups, each taking positions that perfectly mimicked the quantum resonance points of the gravitational field. See how the gravity makes those pretty spiral patterns when you sync up with it. Sarah pointed to the luminous trails left behind by her ships. If you match the spirals just right, you can sort of surf the gravity waves. It makes everything flow better, and it looks amazing with the new particle effects I added. Zextal's tendrils coiled tightly. What this child described as surfing was a precise application of quantum drift principles that had taken Confederation physicists 3 centuries to develop. Yet she had not only replicated the technique but improved upon it, adding variations that the Admiral's trained eyes recognized as ingenious solutions to long-standing navigational challenges. Your ships, the Admiral began carefully. They'd move in unusual patterns. Who taught you these strategies? Sarah shrugged, her attention still focused on the swirling display. Nobody really. I just try stuff until it looks right. The game has this cool feature where you can see other players' solutions after you beat a level. Sometimes I borrow ideas, but mostly I like making my own paths. One of the braver children who had been watching spoke up. Sarah always finds the weird ways through. That's why she has the highest score in the global rankings. Global rankings? Zextal's tendrils twitched with interest. Yeah, there's like millions of us playing. Sarah explained, executing another series of maneuvers that would have earned her immediate command of a Confederation science vessel. We all share our solutions, and the game combines them to make new challenges. It's pretty cool how everyone comes up with different ways to solve the same puzzle. The Admiral watched in fascination as Sarah pulled up a visualization of the global player network. It was a vast web of interconnected nodes, each representing a player's unique solutions and innovations. The patterns of information flow were strikingly similar to the Confederation's own tactical development networks, but far more organic and somehow more efficient. Some of these paths, Zextal observed, pointing to a particularly complex series of maneuvers, they shouldn't be possible according to standard spatial mechanics. Sarah laughed. Yeah, the physics teachers say that too. But they work in the game, see? She demonstrated another impossible sequence, her ships weaving through space in ways that defied conventional understanding but achieved perfect resonance with the gravitational fields. The math looks super weird, but when you feel the flow of it, it just makes sense. The Admiral's tendrils curled in astonishment. Feel the flow. This child was intuitively grasping concepts that the Confederation's most advanced AIs struggled to compute. And she wasn't alone. Millions of human children were doing the same, sharing and building upon each other's impossible solutions, all while thinking they were simply playing a game. Sarah, Zextal said slowly, their voice carrying a weight that made the girl finally look up from her display. Would you be willing to show me more of these impossible paths? The holographic display in Sarah's family living room cast a soft blue glow across the faces of her parents as Admiral Zextal reviewed archived footage of their daughter's gameplay sessions. The Admiral's neural tendrils wavered between expressions of disbelief and excitement as each new recording revealed another breakthrough that had eluded the Confederation's finest minds. She started playing when she was 6, Sarah's mother, Dr. Chen, explained as she adjusted the playback settings. The basic version was just simple orbital mechanics, but Sarah kept asking for more challenging scenarios. That's when she discovered the mod community. The footage shifted to show a younger Sarah collaborating with other children online, their avatars gathering in virtual space to tackle increasingly complex gravitational puzzles. What the humans called mods were, in fact, sophisticated spatial modeling programs that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The community aspect was what really drew her in, Sarah's father added, touching a control that expanded the display to show the global network of players. Kids from every corner of Earth connecting, competing, collaborating. They're constantly building on each other's discoveries. Zextal's secondary eyes tracked the flow of data across the network while their primary pair focused on a particular sequence where 6-year-old Sarah had casually solved the infamous Kepler's labyrinth, a gravitational maze that had claimed countless Confederation probe ships. And none of them realize, the Admiral asked softly. None of them understand what they're actually doing. Dr. Chen shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. To them, it's just a game. The more beautiful the solution, the higher the score. They compete to create the most elegant paths through space, never realizing they're revolutionizing astrophysics in the process. The display shifted again, showing Sarah's most recent creation, a mod that she titled Rainbow Rapids. The Admiral's tendrils coiled in shock as they recognized the underlying mathematics. The child had unknowingly created a perfect model of quantum slitstream navigation, something the Confederation had theorized, but never successfully implemented. "Watch this part," Sarah's father said, highlighting a section where multiple players were building upon Sarah's initial design. They call it chain reaction modding. One child creates a challenging scenario. Then others try to solve it in new ways, which inspires more variations. It's become this ever-evolving ecosystem of innovation. Zextal's tendrils waved in patterns that reflected deep thought. And this happens globally. All human children have access to this game. Anyone can download the basic version, Dr. Chen confirmed. The children share their mods freely. They've created this incredible collaborative space where imagination and physics intersect. Some of my colleagues in the physics department have started studying the children's solutions, trying to understand the underlying principles. The Admiral activated their personal data terminal, quickly cross-referencing the game's release date with Confederation records. The correlation was undeniable. Breakthrough after breakthrough in human space technology coincided with popular new mods in stellar paths. The humans had been advancing their understanding of space travel through their children's playtime. Sarah mentioned something earlier about feeling the flow of space. Zextal said, their tendrils forming the pattern that indicated deep curiosity. Is this common among the players? Sarah's parents exchanged knowing looks. They all describe it differently, her father explained. Some talk about the flow, others about the music of the stars or the dance of gravity. They've developed their own language to describe complex gravitational interactions. The fascinating part is, despite never having formal training, they're all describing legitimate physical phenomena, just in their own intuitive way. The Admiral's tendrils curled with sudden understanding. The Confederation had spent centuries trying to quantify and compute their way through the mysteries of space. Meanwhile, human children had simply turned those same mysteries into a game, allowing their natural intuition and creativity to find solutions that pure logic had missed. Dr. Chen, Zextal said, their voice carrying a note of barely contained excitement. I believe we need to discuss the possibility of a rather unique cultural exchange program. The Confederation Embassy's secure briefing room felt sterile and formal after the warm atmosphere of the Chen family's living room. Admiral Zextal's neural tendrils twisted with barely contained excitement as they presented their findings to the assembled dignitaries. The holographic display now showed a side-by-side comparison. On one side, the classified Confederation spatial navigation protocols. On the other, Sarah's latest custom level. As you can see, Zextal explained, their tendrils gesturing at the parallel displays. The human child has not only replicated our most advanced navigation techniques, but has fundamentally improved upon them. And she did this while trying to make, in her words, pretty patterns in space. The gathered officials' expressions ranged from skepticism to astonishment. Ambassador Krell, their facial crystals flickering with doubt, raised a manipulator appendage. Surely this is an isolated incident. One gifted child's random success. Sarah chose that moment to pop her head into the briefing room, accompanied by her mother. "Sorry I'm late. Mom said you wanted to see my new mod." She paused, taking in the formal gathering with wide eyes. "Oh, should I come back later?" Perfect timing. Actually, the Admiral's tendrils formed a welcoming pattern. "Would you show us your latest creation? The one you were working on this morning?" Sarah's face lit up as she approached the holographic interface. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease, and the display transformed into a complex gravitational cascade. "I call this one quantum ballet. It's tricky because you have to synchronize multiple ship groups with the gravity waves, but when you get it right..." The assembled dignitaries watched in stunned silence as Sarah's virtual fleet executed a series of maneuvers that, according to every known law of physics, should have been impossible. The ships wove through gravitational fields like dancers through falling rain, their paths creating intricate patterns that seemed to bend space itself. "The really cool part," Sarah continued, oblivious to the impact she was having on the galaxy's most powerful officials, "is how the quantum resonance creates these beautiful spiral patterns. See how the gravity wells sort of sing together. Other players have already started building on it. Want to see what Maya from Brazil did with the base concept?" Ambassador Krell's crystals had shifted from doubtful purple to astonished blue. "This child speaks of quantum resonance as if discussing a simple melody." "That's exactly it," Dr. Chen interjected, her professional demeanor tinged with maternal pride. "These children aren't constrained by what they think is impossible. They approach space like a playground, not a problem to be solved." Zextal gestured toward another data stream appearing on the display. "This shows the current active players of stellar paths. Over 3 million human children, all unconsciously pushing the boundaries of known physics. They've created a collaborative network of innovation that outperforms our most advanced research institutions." Sarah, still focused on her game, made a small adjustment that caused the gravitational waves to align in a new configuration. The pattern she created made one of the junior science officers drop their data pad in shock. She had just casually solved the infamous Cassini division dilemma. "Oh, that's neat," Sarah said, noticing the pattern. "The waves look like they're braiding together. I bet if you added a third resonance layer here..." Her fingers moved again, and a holographic display erupted in a cascade of synchronized gravitational waves that made the Confederation's best theoretical models look primitive by comparison. Admiral Zextal's tendrils formed the pattern for profound revelation. "Don't you see? We've been approaching space travel entirely wrong. We've spent centuries trying to force space to conform to our mathematical models. These children, they've learned to dance with space itself." Sarah finally looked up from her game, noticing the intense attention she was receiving. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, young one," Ambassador Krell said, their crystals now glowing with warm appreciation. "You've done something wonderfully, impossibly right. Tell me how many of your friends would be interested in teaching Confederation scientists how to play." The converted conference room at the Confederation Embassy hummed with the energy of 24 children from around the world, their excited chatter mixing with the soft bleeps and chimes of their gaming interfaces. Admiral Zextal's tendrils swayed in gentle amazement as they watched Sarah guide a young Confederation scientist through her latest modification to stellar paths. "No, no," Sarah laughed, reaching over to adjust the scientist's controls. "You're thinking too hard about it. Don't calculate the gravitational resonance. Feel it. See how the waves make patterns. They're like ripples in a pond. You want to flow with them, not fight them." The scientist, a crystalline being named Ixel, shifted their facets in concentration. But the quantum fluctuations are super pretty if you let them be. Sarah interrupted. Look, Maya, show them your rainbow cascade technique. A girl from Brazil grinned and pulled up her own interface. Her fingers danced across the controls, and the holographic display erupted in a spectacular series of interwoven gravitational streams. The paths her ships took created harmonious patterns that made the assembled Confederation scientists' sensory organs twitch with disbelief. It's like a symphony, Maya explained, her ships weaving through space in ways that defied conventional physics. Each gravity well has its own song, and you just need to help them sing together. Admiral Zextal noticed that several of their scientists had stopped taking notes entirely, their recording devices forgotten as they watched the children casually reshape their understanding of spatial mechanics. On the far side of the room, a group of kids were teaching a junior researcher how to surf the quantum foam, their laughter punctuating each successful maneuver. Admiral, Sarah called out, waving them over. We found something really cool. Remember that tricky spot in the Carina Nebula you told us about? The one your ships can't navigate. Zextal moved closer, their tendrils curling with interest. The Carina anomaly had claimed dozens of probe ships and was considered completely impassable. You've been studying it. Playing with it, Sarah corrected, pulling up a new simulation. Look what happens when you treat the quantum eddies like jump rope patterns. Her fingers flew across the interface, and the display showed a complex series of gravitational interactions that made the Admiral's secondary eyes widen in shock. The children had turned one of the most dangerous regions of known space into what they called a multiplayer puzzle challenge. As Zextal watched, kids from 6 continents collaborated in real time, their ships dancing through the deadly anomaly with graceful ease. The trick, explained a boy from Kenya named Ha, is to stop treating space like it's an obstacle course. It's more like a dance partner. Right, Sarah? Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. And the best part is, everyone dances differently. Show them your spiral technique. Ta. The display split into multiple views as children around the room demonstrated their unique approaches to navigating the anomaly. Each solution was wildly different, yet they all worked perfectly. Where Confederation scientists had tried to force their way through with brute mathematical precision, these children had turned navigation into an art form. We've added some new features too, Sarah said proudly, pulling up another interface. Now players can feel the gravitational waves through their haptic controls. It's helping lots more kids understand the flow of space. Admiral Zextal's tendrils formed the pattern for deep realization. These children weren't just solving individual navigational challenges. They were developing an entirely new way of understanding space itself. And they were sharing this understanding with an infectious enthusiasm that was beginning to affect even the most rigid Confederation minds. Sarah, the Admiral said, their voice carrying a note of wonder, would you and your friends be interested in helping us design a new type of space academy? One where we teach navigation your way. The girl's eyes lit up. You mean like a giant multiplayer space game? With real ships? She turned to her friends, who were already buzzing with excitement. That would be amazing. Could we add pretty colors to the quantum wakes of your ships too? Zextal's tendrils rippled with amusement. I believe, young one, that you're about to help us add color to a great many things we thought we understood. The Confederation Academy's main simulation chamber had never seen anything quite like this. Gone were the austere geometric displays and rigid mathematical models. Instead, the vast holographic space bloomed with swirling colors and dynamic patterns as Sarah led the first joint human-alien training session. The secret, she explained to the mixed group of eager students, her voice carrying the confidence of a seasoned teacher despite her youth, is to stop thinking of space as empty. It's more like a giant trampoline filled with water balloons. Admiral Zextal watched from the observation deck as their most promising young officers attempted to grasp this uniquely human perspective. Among the students were representatives from 12 different species, each bringing their own unique sensory understanding to the challenge. A young crystalline officer raised their fractal appendage. But the gravitational equations. Forget the equations for now. Sarah interrupted gently. Close your eyes, or whatever you use to see, and feel the rhythm of the gravity waves. Maya, show them the Rainbow River technique. Maya, now serving as Earth's youngest spatial dynamics instructor, initiated a new simulation. The chamber filled with a complex gravitational slipstream that the human children had discovered during what they called a midnight gaming marathon. See how the waves pulse. Maya demonstrated, her ships sliding through the impossible currents with elegant precision. Each gravity well has its own heartbeat. Once you learn to feel it, you can predict exactly how it'll move. A methane breather named ZXX suddenly let out a musical tone of excitement. Their ships had begun moving in perfect harmony with the gravitational flows, creating patterns that made the Admiral's tendrils curl with delight. I understand, ZXX chimed. It's like the gas currents in my home world's atmosphere. You don't fight them, you become part of their dance. Sarah beamed. Exactly. Everyone has something from their own world that helps them understand. For Tao, it's like the ocean waves he surfs in Kenya. For Jin, it's like the wind patterns she studies in Mongolia. The Admiral's attention shifted to a bank of data screens showing the results of this new training program. The statistics were remarkable. Learning rates had increased by 300%. Success rates in complex navigation scenarios had doubled. Most surprisingly, species that had traditionally struggled with spatial navigation were showing unprecedented improvement. The really cool part, Sarah continued, pulling up a new simulation, is how different everyone's style is. Look at how Cthulhu uses crystalline resonance patterns to map quantum flows, and ZXX's methane-based understanding helped us find entirely new ways to interpret slipstream dynamics. The chamber erupted in a dazzling display as each student demonstrated their unique approach to navigating a particularly challenging gravitational maze. The human children had dubbed it the Cosmic Dance Competition, turning what was once a dreaded training exercise into an enthusiastic exhibition of skill and creativity. Dr. Chen, who had been quietly observing beside the Admiral, smiled. They're rewriting our understanding of educational theory along with physics. Every species learns differently, but play seems to be a universal language. Zextel's tendrils formed patterns of agreement. We've spent centuries trying to force the galaxy's diverse species to understand space through a single rigid framework. These children have shown us that every perspective, every cultural understanding, adds another piece to the puzzle. Down in the chamber, Sarah was now leading the group through what she called a quantum choreography exercise. Ships of various designs moved through space in ways that would have been considered impossible just months ago, each pilot contributing their own cultural interpretation to the collective dance. Admiral, Dr. Chen said softly, I believe we're witnessing more than just a new way of teaching space navigation. This could fundamentally change how species interact across the galaxy. Zextel's tendrils curled in thoughtful appreciation as they watched a crystalline student explain their understanding of quantum resonance through the metaphor of Earth's aurora borealis, while a human child compared it to music theory. Indeed, Doctor, these children aren't just building bridges through space. They're building them between worlds. The grand amphitheater of the Confederation Cultural Exchange Center buzzed with an energy that made Admiral Zextel's neural tendrils dance. 6 months had passed since the implementation of what the media now called the Children's Revolution in Space, and today marked the first Intergalactic Youth Symposium on Spatial Dynamics, or as Sarah insisted on calling it, the biggest multiplayer space party ever. Holographic displays filled the massive space, each showing different interpretations of spatial phenomena created by young minds from across the galaxy. In one corner, a group of crystalline children were teaching human students how to visualize quantum fields through prismatic refraction. Nearby, young Method brothers demonstrated their species' unique understanding of fluid dynamics to an enthusiastic audience of mixed species. Sarah, now sporting the official Confederation Junior Instructor badge, which she had redesigned to include rainbow sparkles, stood at the central platform with her friend Kittal, a young crystalline who had become one of her closest collaborators. "Watch this," Sarah announced to the gathered crowd. "Kittal and I figured out something amazing when we combined our ideas about space." Her fingers danced across the controls while Kittal's crystalline appendages resonated at specific frequencies. The main holographic display erupted in a spectacular demonstration that made even the most seasoned Confederation scientists gasp. By combining human intuitive understanding with crystalline harmonic principles, they had discovered an entirely new way to manipulate quantum fields. "We call it the Crystal Rainbow Bridge," Kittal chimed, their facets glowing with excitement. "Sarah showed me how to think of quantum resonance like music, and I helped her understand how my people see space through crystalline harmonics." Admiral Zextal watched as Dr. Chen recorded the demonstration, her expression showing both maternal pride and professional amazement. "They're not just sharing techniques anymore," she observed. "They're creating entirely new ways of understanding space by combining their perspectives." The evidence was all around them. Young Method brothers were teaching human children how to feel gravitational currents through their natural sensitivity to fluid dynamics. Human children were helping crystalline youth understand the dance of gravity through music and movement. Each species brought their unique perceptions to the collaboration, and the results were revolutionary. The really exciting part, Sarah explained to a group of journalists from various worlds, is how everyone sees space differently. Like, Zex's people feel gravity waves kind of like we feel wind, and Kittal's people see quantum fields as crystal songs. When we share how we each understand it, we all learn new ways to navigate. Maya, broadcasting from her station in Brazil, appeared on one of the large displays. "Sarah, you have to see this. We just had a breakthrough with the Andromedan delegation." The display split to show a group of energy-based beings collaborating with human children on what appeared to be a new form of quantum slipstream navigation. "They're teaching us how to perceive space as pure energy patterns," Maya explained excitedly, "and we're helping them understand it through dance choreography. The combination is incredible." The Admiral's tendrils curled with appreciation as they observed the proceedings. What had started as a simple discovery, a child's game that unknowingly revolutionized space travel, had evolved into something far more profound. These children weren't just solving navigation problems, they were breaking down barriers between species that had existed for millennia. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Sarah said, suddenly appearing beside the Admiral. "Everyone was so worried about how different we all are, but that's what makes it work. Space is too big and amazing for any one way of seeing it to be enough." Zextal's tendrils formed patterns of deep agreement. "You've taught us something far more valuable than navigation, young one. You've shown us that the greatest discoveries come not from imposing a single understanding, but from celebrating our different ways of seeing." Sarah grinned, her badge twinkling in the light of 1,000 holographic displays. "Plus," she added with a wink, "it's way more fun this way. Did you see the new game mode the Andromedan kids designed? They're calling it Quantum Tag, and it's amazing." The Admiral watched as Sarah rushed off to join another group of mixed species children, all eagerly sharing their unique perspectives on the cosmos. In trying to understand how human children saw space, they had discovered something far more precious, a way for all species to see the universe through each other's eyes. 1 year after their chance encounter at a science fair, Admiral Zextal stood at the observation deck of the Confederation's newest vessel, the Stellar Harmony. Below them, Earth's atmosphere shimmered with the iridescent trails of ships arriving for the first Intergalactic Youth Space Academy graduation ceremony. The ship itself was unlike anything in the Confederation's fleet. Gone were the stark, utilitarian designs of traditional vessels. Instead, the stellar harmony incorporated insights from every member species, its systems designed to accommodate their unique ways of perceiving and navigating space. The bridge featured crystalline resonance arrays alongside human-designed intuitive controls, methane breather current sensors, and dozens of other innovations born from the unprecedented collaboration between young minds. Still hard to believe it all started with a wrong turn at a science fair, isn't it? Sarah's voice came from behind the Admiral. Now 13, she wore the ceremonial robes of a junior navigation instructor, though she'd added her own touches, subtle rainbow patterns that shifted like quantum waves in the light. Zextal's tendrils formed patterns of worn remembrance. The best discoveries often come from unexpected directions, young one. They watched as another ship emerged from slipstream space, its arrival marked by a beautiful cascade of quantum effects that would have been considered impossible a year ago. The ship's design incorporated elements from 3 different species, its navigation systems guided by the combined insights of their children. The Andromedian delegation just arrived, Sarah noted, checking her holographic display. Their youngest navigator is only equivalent to 6 Earth years old, but she's already developed 2 new ways of perceiving quantum fields. She says space looks like music sounds. The Admiral's secondary eyes tracked the approaching vessel while their primary pair studied Sarah's expression. "You've come a long way from making pretty patterns in a game." Sarah laughed, her fingers unconsciously tracing patterns in the air that matched the quantum wake of the arriving ships. "But that's just it. We're still making pretty patterns. We've just got a bigger playground now, and more friends to play with." The observation deck's door whispered open as Dr. Chen entered, accompanied by Ketal and representatives from a dozen other species. Each wore their own version of ceremonial dress, creating a stunning visual harmony of different cultural expressions. "The ceremony's about to begin," Dr. Chen announced. "Sarah, they're waiting for you to lead the demonstration." The Admiral watched as Sarah straightened her robes, exchanging excited glances with Ketal. In the past year, what had started as a child's game had evolved into something that was reshaping the galaxy's understanding of space travel. But more importantly, it had changed how species saw each other. The main ceremony was being held in Earth's largest stadium, temporarily converted into a massive simulation chamber. As they made their way there, Zextal reflected on the changes they'd witnessed. The Confederation's rigid hierarchies had given way to collaborative learning environments. Species that once struggled to communicate now shared their unique perspectives freely, each contribution celebrated for how it enriched their collective understanding. "Admiral," Sarah said as they approached the stadium, "remember when you asked me if I knew what I was really doing with those space patterns?" Zextal's tendrils curled in amusement. "I remember being quite astonished that a child's game could contain such profound insights." Sarah smiled, gesturing at the gathered crowds of multiple species, their children playing together with various navigation interfaces. Maybe that was the most important insight of all. Not the navigation techniques or the quantum physics, but the fact that it was a game. When we play, we're all the same somehow. We all just want to explore and make something beautiful. The Admiral's tendrils formed patterns of deep appreciation as they entered the stadium. Above them, the sky was alive with the quantum wakes of ships from across the galaxy, each trail a different color, creating an ever-changing aurora of interstellar communion. "Indeed, young one," Zextal agreed, watching as Sarah rushed off to join a group of excited young beings from a dozen different worlds. "You've taught us that the greatest discoveries come not from seeing the universe as it is, but as it could be, through the eyes of a child at play." In the stadium below, the first class of the Intergalactic Youth Space Academy prepared to demonstrate their unique approaches to space navigation. Each student brought their own species perspective, yet all were united by the simple joy of exploration and discovery that Sarah had first shown them 1 year ago. The universe, it seemed, had been waiting for someone to see it not as a problem to be solved, but as a dance to be joined. It had been waiting for children.